There's a stone in Lebanon that weighs as much as 3 Boeing 747 jets. It was carved, moved, and lifted into place thousands of years ago. And nobody can explain how. Not even with our modern technology. That's not a conspiracy theory. That's a documented fact. And it's just one of 5 impossible structures we're about to explore that'll make you question everything you thought you knew about ancient history. Look, I'm not here to tell you it was aliens. I'm here to show you what actually exists on this planet right now, today, and let you decide for yourself how our ancestors pulled this off. Because when you see what I'm about to show you, the official explanations start to sound more unbelievable than the alternative theories. Let's start with the most mind-blowing one. In Baalbek, Lebanon, there's a Roman temple complex sitting on top of something that shouldn't be possible. Underneath the Roman columns and architecture, there's a foundation made of stones so massive that engineers today scratch their heads trying to figure out how they got there. We're talking about the trilithon, 3 rectangular blocks of limestone weighing around 800 tons. That's 1.6 million pounds per stone. Now, here's where it gets weird. These stones are fitted together so precisely that you can't slide a piece of paper between them. No mortar, no cement, just raw stone cut so perfectly that they've been sitting there for potentially over 2,000 years without budging an inch. The Romans built on top of this foundation, but even Roman historians wrote that they had no idea who built the base. They just built their temple on top of it because, well, if someone already did the impossible work, why not use it? But wait, it gets crazier. Still in the quarry, about a quarter mile away from the temple complex, there's an even bigger stone. It's called the Stone of the Pregnant Woman, and it weighs approximately 1,650 tons. That's over 3 million pounds. And it's cut, shaped, ready to be transported. But it's still lying there in the quarry, like whoever was working on it just stopped mid-project and never came back. Think about that for a second. Our biggest cranes today can lift maybe 2,000 tons under perfect conditions with counterweights and engineering calculations and teams of experts. But moving a 1,650-ton stone a quarter mile and then lifting it 20 feet in the air to place it perfectly next to other massive stones, we'd struggle to do that today. So how did people without hydraulic machinery, without computers, without steel, accomplish this thousands of years ago? The standard explanation is ramps, ropes, and manpower. Thousands of workers pulling together. But mathematicians have run the numbers. To move the Stone of the Pregnant Woman, you'd need the combined pulling power of over 40,000 men, shoulder to shoulder, all pulling in perfect coordination, on a road that would have to be perfectly smooth and engineered itself just to handle the weight. Does that sound realistic? Or does it sound like we're trying to force an answer because we don't have a better one? Let's jump across the world to Peru. High up in the Andes Mountains, there's a place called Ollantaytambo. The Inca used it as a fortress, but just like Baalbek, there's evidence that the Inca built on top of something much older. At the top of this site, there are 6 massive rose-colored granite blocks, each weighing around 50 tons, standing upright and fitted together with the same impossible precision we saw in Lebanon. Here's the problem. The nearest quarry for that specific type of rose granite is on the other side of a river, up a mountain, about 6 miles away. So these builders somehow quarried 50-ton blocks, transported them down a mountain, across a river, and then back up another mountain. Then they lifted them into a perfect vertical position and fitted them so tight you can't slip a credit card between them. And we're supposed to believe they did this with copper chisels and stone hammers. But there's something even stranger at Ollantaytambo. On some of the stone blocks, there are these weird knobs sticking out, little protruding bumps of stone left on the surface. Archaeologists say these were handles used to move the stones. Okay, fine, but then why are some of them in positions where they'd be completely useless for leverage? And why do some blocks have these smooth, almost melted-looking edges, like the stone was soft when it was shaped? Local legends in Peru talk about a time when the stones were soft, when the builders knew how to make rock like clay. Western archaeologists dismiss this as mythology, but what if oral traditions preserve some truth we've forgotten? What if there was a technique, a technology, method we've completely lost to time? Now, let's talk about Egypt. Everyone knows the pyramids. But there's something in Aswan that doesn't get nearly enough attention. In the ancient granite quarries of Aswan, there's an obelisk. Well, almost an obelisk. It's called the unfinished obelisk, and it's still attached to the bedrock. If it had been completed, it would have been the largest obelisk ever constructed. 137 feet tall, weighing about 1,200 tons. That's heavier than 4 statues of Liberty combined. The thing is still lying there, partially carved out of solid granite. And granite isn't sandstone. Granite is one of the hardest stones on Earth. On the Mohs hardness scale, granite sits around a 6 or 7. The ancient Egyptians, according to mainstream history, mostly had copper tools. Copper is a 3 on that same scale. You can't cut something harder with something softer. That's not opinion. That's basic material science. So how did they do it? The official story involves pounding the granite with harder stones called dolerite, basically smashing rock with rock for weeks until you carve out the shape you want. Some experiments have shown this is technically possible, but here's the question nobody wants to answer. If it took that long to carve an obelisk using the pounding method, how did Egypt produce hundreds of obelisks, countless statues, temple blocks, and sarcophagi? The math doesn't add up. The labor hours required would be astronomical. We're talking generations of workers doing nothing but smashing rocks together, and yet, these obelisks have smooth surfaces, sharp edges, and in some cases, hieroglyphs carved with incredible detail. Does that look like it was made by smashing rocks? Or does it look like it was cut with precision tools? Here's another thing. Tool marks. Or rather, the lack of them in certain places. Some of the granite boxes in the Serapeum of Saqqara are hollowed out with inside corners, so sharp and clean that modern machinists say it looks like it was done with high-speed rotary tools. I'm not making that up. Professional engineers have gone to Egypt, measured these artifacts, and publicly stated they have no idea how this was done without advanced machinery. But let's keep moving. Next stop, Bolivia. Puma Punku is part of a larger complex near Tiwanaku, sitting almost 13,000 feet above sea level on the Altiplano. And it's here that precision goes from impressive to absolutely ridiculous. We're talking about andesite and diorite blocks carved with interlocking shapes that look like they came out of a machine shop. There are 8-shaped blocks that fit together like Lego pieces. Perfectly straight edges, 90-degree angles, smooth interior corners. Some blocks have channels and grooves cut into them with such accuracy that when measured, they're within a millimeter of being identical. A millimeter across stones that weigh 10, 20, even 100 tons. Andesite, by the way, is another extremely hard stone. You're not shaping that with a copper chisel. You're definitely not creating laser straight lines and perfect right angles by pecking at it with a hammer stone. And yet, there it is, sitting in the ruins of Puma Punku, scattered like a giant's construction set that was abandoned mid-build. What happened here? The site looks like it was destroyed by some cataclysmic event. Blocks are thrown around. Some are cracked. Others look like they were tossed by a massive force. Mainstream dating puts the construction somewhere around 500 to 600 AD. But some researchers argue the stonework is much, much older, possibly over 12,000 years old, based on geological water erosion and astronomical alignments. If that's true, then we're talking about a civilization with advanced stone working capabilities that existed before the last ice age ended. Before agriculture supposedly began, before recorded history. That flips the entire timeline of human development upside down. And the craziest part, the people who lived in that region when the Spanish arrived had no memory of who built Puma Punku. The Inca, the Aymara, none of them claimed it as their own work. They said it was already ancient when their ancestors arrived. Already in ruins. Already a mystery. Alright, last one. And this might be the most bizarre. Off the coast of Micronesia, there's a place called Nan Madol. It's often called the Venice of the Pacific, and for good reason. It's an entire city built on top of a coral reef, made up of nearly 100 artificial islets constructed from massive basalt columns and boulders. These aren't small rocks. Some of these basalt logs weigh up to 50 tons. The whole complex covers about 200 acres and was built, according to radiocarbon dating, sometime between 1200 and 1500 AD. The local legend, though, tells a different story. The Pohnpeian people say that Nan Madol was built by twin sorcerers who used magic to make the stones fly through the air and stack themselves into place. Obviously, we don't take that literally. But here's the thing. There's no source of basalt on the main island of Pohnpei where Nan Madol sits. The basalt had to come from the other side of the island or from a different island altogether. So these builders transported millions of tons of basalt, floated them across the ocean on rafts, and then somehow stacked them into walls up to 25 feet high on a coral reef in the middle of the ocean. Why? Why build a massive city in one of the most difficult locations imaginable? There's no fresh water, no agricultural land. The tide comes in and out through the canals. It's not exactly prime real estate. Some say it was a ceremonial center, a place for the elite ruling class. Maybe, but the effort involved seems absurd for that purpose. And just like the other sites we've talked about, nobody really knows how they moved those stones. The official explanation involves rafts and high tides and lots of manpower. But show me the evidence. Show me the ropes, the tools, the remnants of the ramps or docks or whatever infrastructure would have been needed to pull this off. It's just not there. All we have are the stones themselves, sitting in silent testimony to a feat of engineering that seems wildly out of place for the time period. So what's the connection? Why are we finding these impossibly precise, impossibly heavy, impossibly transported stones all over the world? Different continents, different cultures, different time periods, supposedly, and yet, the same unexplainable craftsmanship. Maybe there's no connection. Maybe humans all over the world just independently figured out how to do the impossible with primitive tools. Maybe we're underestimating the ingenuity and capability of ancient people. That's a fair point, and honestly, I'd love for that to be the answer. It would mean we're far more capable than we give ourselves credit for. But it also might mean something else. It might mean there's a chapter of human history we've completely forgotten. A time when knowledge and technology were far more advanced than we assume. And for whatever reason, that knowledge was lost. Maybe through cataclysm, maybe through societal collapse, maybe through something we haven't even considered yet. The stones are still there. You can go visit them. You can touch them. You can measure them. They're not theories or myths. They're physical evidence of something we can't fully explain. And until we can, maybe we should stay humble about what we think we know about the past. If this made you think twice about history class, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button. There's so much more to explore, and I'm just getting started. Drop a comment and tell me which of these sites blew your mind the most, or if you've actually been to any of them. I read every single one. Alright, I'll see you in the next one.